Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So earlier this week I did a video and I just walked through the basic elements of a Broadway or off-Broadway budget. And as I was going through the budget, I noticed on the example I was sharing that on the recoupment chart, and I have a recoupment chart up on my screen right now, that on the recoupment chart at 80% capacity, and I'll show this to you right now if you see it right there, at 80% capacity, we were recouping our fixed production costs at 59 weeks. And normally, the metric that I like to use for 80% capacity in an ideal world, we can't achieve it all the time, but I like to be about under a year, 51 weeks, 50 weeks if possible at 80% capacity. Again, that's a luxury. You look at a lot of the biggest Broadway musicals opening these days right now, their recoupment charts at 80% capacity could be 2 years. And for some big Broadway musicals that are looking to become institutions on Broadway, that could be totally fine for them. But, and in particular in the off-Broadway world, I really want to be just under a year at 80% capacity. And the reason why is if you look at 100% capacity always looks great. On this chart right here, I'm recouping in well under a year at 100% capacity. But we all know, and most investors all know, that we're probably not playing at 100% capacity most of the time. And so it's really that 80% number that I'm looking at as a general manager, that my producing clients are looking at, and that investors are looking at. So I said at the time of the video that I wanted to do another video where we actually tried to attack that 80% capacity recoupment number and see if we can get those weeks down. So I wanted to do that exercise live today. I've got some notes here. I don't know if you can see them, some highlights, some thoughts that I have to try to get that 59 down to something over a year. And I haven't done this yet, so we're going to be doing this in real time, so it's possible we won't get there, but I'm going to try. Now, the thing I'll say is that this involves compromise. We're going to have to make some tough choices. But if we're trying to build a business and starting a new, let's just call this an off-Broadway musical, because the chart that we're looking at today is for a large off-Broadway musical, we have to make tough choices because that's the only way we're going to create a business that can last years and years and years, or that we can create a business that for which we can attract investors. So today is going to be about tough choices. If this was not about tough choices, I wouldn't be doing this video, and frankly, I really wouldn't have a job. So we're going to make some tough choices today. We're not going to like them all. But again, the goal here is sustainable business. So I've got this recoupment chart up, and I just want to highlight a few things to start off. So number one, we have a minimum capitalization of $3.8 million. That includes, and I'll scroll down to the bottom here, our total of fixed production costs, our reserve, and our bonds and advances. So that brings us to $3.8 million. And I have weekly running costs of $177,000. Which actually for a large off-Broadway musical is not terrible. That doesn't include theater expenses, I'll say, and we'll look at the theater expenses in a moment. And we're doing this at a 499 seat theater. So those are the parameters for which we're doing this exercise. And at a 499 seat theater, I'm showing our gross potential as $413,000 per week. And that brings us an ATP of $105 per ticket. Now that's average, especially if a lot of the 499s off-Broadway, there's probably going to be a mezzanine, so those tickets will be priced lower. But there's a great orchestra section where we can drive up the average ticket price. I think 105 is fair. Right now, as I'm recording this video, it's fall of 25. It's getting to be a little low. I think it's reasonable to do a first pass at a budget with 105 ATP. But I think as we move into 2026 and beyond, that 105 is going to be hard to make budgets work with. That's just not rising with the cost of inflation. I think I've been showing on off-Broadway musicals 105, 110 for the last couple years now, but the cost of mounting an off-Broadway musical are just rising, and so we're going to have to start charging more per ticket. I'll probably do another video about pricing and our cost structure later, but for now, I'm going to try to keep, for today's video, the ATP at 105, but that is a lever we can play with. We can play with keeping everything on the previous pages the same, but raising the ATP. But raising the ATP is kind of a theoretical exercise because we don't know if the market will bear it. What I have control over is changing my costs, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the other thing I just want to highlight, and I'll go over to the production budget again. This is actually not the way it's currently budgeted. I'm not seeing numbers that I would call overly produced. So I have scenery right here for $200,000. For a large off-Broadway musical, that might not even be enough. I'm seeing 350,000. I think 100,000 wouldn't be enough for scenic. 350 would be fair. So 200 we're not overproducing this musical. There's not a lot of fat in that $200,000 number. Similar, if I come down to advertising, 350,000 pre-opening advertising budget is not crazy to me at the end of 2025. I could even argue we should be raising that a little bit more. So there's not a lot of fat in that 3.8 million. And the approach we always encourage people to take is to put as much money as they can reasonably pitch to investors to open the show, to build the show with as much quality as possible, but then to run it as leanly as possible. So don't cheap out, in other words, on opening the show. Invest in quality at the outset, and hopefully that can lead to running the show nimbly and leanly for weeks and years on end. So that's a very long way of saying I'm going to try to leave this 3.8 number as is. So what I'm really backing into here is I don't want to change my ATP just yet. And I don't want to change the 3.8 number dramatically just yet. So by process of elimination, what I'm really trying to look at right now is the weekly budget, which before theater expenses is coming in at $177,000. So shall we do it? Shall we make some tough choices? So again, I'm just going to show the recoupment chart one more time. Here we are at 80% capacity. My fixed production costs recouping in 59 weeks. And if I can attack it today, I'm going to get that down to just under a year. Again, I haven't run any of the math on that, so we could fail. But let's try not to fail. Okay, so let's go over to the weekly budget. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So here's my show, Operation Meat Pies. So a few things I'll just draw everyone's attention to. Number one, so I have 15 people on stage between my stars, my principal, and my chorus. That's 15 people. And I have 5 musicians I have on stage. I have a conductor, and I've got 4 in the band. And the thing that I always advise people on when budgeting is it's the humans that cost us the most. And what I mean by that is, yes, each human that we employ on a week-to-week basis obviously has a salary, but it's also all of the downstream consequences. Again, if we think of starting a new off-Broadway musical like starting a new company, the more employees we have, the more overhead we have, the more payroll taxes we have, the more health insurance payments we have to make each week. And then there's just also the HR downstream effects of having more humans involved. And I should say, I love having humans. I love to employ as many people as possible when it makes financial sense. But for every actor on stage, I probably need someone covering that part. So whether that's an onstage swing or an offstage understudy, I need another human ready to go to cover that actor. I probably also need costumes for that understudy. I probably also need the bigger the cast gets, the more wardrobe personnel I get. And then just the more complicated the show becomes. You know, each human comes with, rightfully so, human drama and baggage in their own lives. If they get sick, if their grandparent gets sick, we have to deal with each of those and handle them from a human perspective. And so I need more HR infrastructure, more company managers to handle more humans. So as I can decrease the number of humans that are a part of the show on a week-to-week basis, I can attack a lot of different things in the budget besides just eliminating that role. And again, can't say this enough. We love to employ humans, and the more of them we can employ, the better, but they are the most expensive part of the equation, or one of the most expensive parts of the equation. And for each human, there are downstream consequences. So that was also a very long way of saying I'm going to attack the number of people that we're carrying right off the bat. So you can see here, I've got 3 stars, 9 principals, and 3 chorus. Ignore the equity language for a moment. Let's just translate that to there's 15 onstage actors, and then I have 3 understudies. I'm going to first start off by changing this 9 to an 8. That's all I'm going to do. Now, what you can't see is I've got some other formulas here in the budget that help me back out some of the payroll taxes and some of the HR benefits. That's sort of hidden somewhere else in the sheet. But I didn't just reduce the budget by $1,800, which was the salary. I also reduced it plus the benefits of that person. So let's just go back to our recoupment chart for a second. So I went from 59 weeks to 57 weeks. I'm just going to take a note of that. So by reducing 1 human, I was able to shave 2 weeks off the recoupment chart. But I think we need to do better than that. So let's go back to the weekly. And again, you'll see I have 5 people in the band. For an off-Broadway musical, that is large. Now, I love live musicians. I love going to Broadway shows that have huge orchestras, but they have the benefit of playing in theaters that are 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 seats. Off-Broadway, I cap out at 499 seats. I can't be an off-Broadway musical and sell more than 499 seats. And so I just can't carry 5 in the band with 499 seats. If I could add 200 seats and make up for it by bringing in more customers each week, that would be one thing. But I'm limited off Broadway. On Broadway, they could build a theater tomorrow that's 3,000 seats. They don't exist right now. But there are large Broadway theaters that can bring in enough customers physically each week to afford a very large orchestra, and I love it when that happens as a fan of musical theater. But in my $499, I just can't do that. So I'm going to shave 1 musician off of this. And if we're a rock musical, you can probably get by with 4 musicians in total. You've got drums, you've got keys, guitar, and bass. So what we probably don't have at this point is 2 guitar players. So I'm just going to bring that down. And you'll notice up top, my 171, again, that reduced by more than the 2,000 salary costs, because I was also able to reduce some of those downstream effects, the HR, the payroll, taxes, and the health benefits for that extra musician. All right, let's go back to our recoupment chart. Let's see how we did here. I'm not there yet. I'm at 55 weeks. Okay, so I said I was going to try to get this down to under a year. All right, tough choices, folks. Let me look at, so right now I have 2 people in the wardrobe department. I've got a wardrobe supervisor up here, and I have a dresser. I don't think I can go less than that with a cast of this size. I do think we can probably reduce the number of hair assistants. If this is not it's a musical. We will need wigs. It's almost impossible to do a large musical with lots of actors without without wigs, and then therefore someone to maintain the wigs. But I did just reduce 2 humans. I might be able to bring down the hair assistants. So let's do 0 there. All right, let's look at the recoupment chart. 54 weeks. All right, I'm super close to being able to get under a year, but we have to make more hard choices. Let's look at our advertising budget. So our advertising budget right now per week is $30,000. I think that's the bare minimum going into 2026. I just don't think we can reasonably go lower than that. I can't go lower than that. In fact, I'd rather see that go higher. Again, this is the lifeblood of your show. We need to get the word out there. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I'm raising this. I'm doing the exact opposite of what I said I was going to do. That's got to be $35,000. I'd rather pull back a little bit of what's on stage and make sure that we are telling people about our show. All right. Well, as expected, I now am back up to 57 weeks. I started at 59. I take full blame for that. I said we're going to spend more money on advertising. So now I've got a problem. And you can see almost everything else here, accounting, legal, insurance. There's not a lot of fat here. Yeah. We have gotten this down pretty tight, but I have another tool at my disposal. And like I said at the top, I think this is going to be painful. But this is a show, if you come down to my rentals, this is a show that has lighting and sound. It's almost every show does. But it also has projections. And this is a whole other discipline that we're adding to the project. I now have a projection designer. I have a weekly rental line here of $7,500 a week. And so in addition to humans, adding a whole other design element to the show is driving up the costs to produce this show. And again, I love projections. There's fabulous projection designers out there. It is a relatively new medium to theater. I love being able to do it when the show supports it. But again, we have to make choices. Now, maybe I can look at this budget and say, you know what? This show it must have projections. It is essential to the heart of what this show is and the storytelling mechanism. But I can do it, instead of a cast of 15, I can do it with a cast of 5. So each show makes its own trade-offs. There's no one size fits all here. I'm going to say for this show, and we're going to leave it up here, with a cast of 14 on stage. So I'm not going to change that for now, famous last words. But the compromise I'm going to make for today's exercise, the painful elimination I'm going to make, is I'm going to get rid of the projection design on this show. So that's going to have a few effects. On the projection side, on the weekly side, sorry, I can take that 7,500 and I'm going to move it down to 0. That's number one. And then I'm going to go to the production side. And let me make this a little bit bigger. And you can see up here, between the rentals and the purchases and the design of the content, I have $90,000 in pre-opening expenses to support the video team. I'm going to take all of that down to 0. That's gone. I'm also going to very sadly remove the cost of the projection designer. I'm using projection video interchangeably. Sometimes we use video, sometimes we use projection, sometimes a combination, but here I'm just going to use it interchangeably, if you're wondering. I'm going to remove that. I think, did I budget for... I did budget for designer advances, but for some reason I didn't budget enough there to eliminate there. Okay, ignore that for a second. All right, so now my total minimum capitalization is $3.6 million. My weekly budget, weekly operating cost is $167,000. Did we do the thing? What do we think? Let's find out. 51 weeks. We just did it. We just got in. So at 80% capacity, I'm recouping my fixed production costs in 51 weeks. So you can see when we're budgeting, we have to make hard choices. Now, every show is different. It could be that you're about to launch something that had a wildly successful workshop and people are throwing money at you and saying, you know what, we know this show has to operate at 90%, 100%, but we're okay with that because we believe in this show and we think this show is going to be the show that runs at 100% capacity for 3 years. So again, every show is different. Every show is working from a different set of facts, a different set of trade-offs, and frankly, a different story that they're selling to investors, or the investors are valuing different aspects of the show differently than how they would look at another show. Some investors see a show and say, you know what, if this 80% number isn't under a year, I'm out. And some investors on a different show might say, that's fine, because I think the show is going to be operating at 90%, 100%. So this is all fluid. It's all a conversation. But there's going to have to be trade-offs at some part of the process, whether it's saying, you know what, we accept that the recoupment chart doesn't look so great, or we can't accept that, and so we have to make some other painful cuts. So that is just a brief overview of what we do sometimes when we are analyzing a recoupment chart and trying to make those tough choices. We are just getting started with making videos for this channel. If there are other things you want to know about the budgeting process for a new commercial production in New York City, or really any other questions you might have about producing in New York City that we can answer in a future video, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to try to get to those in a future video. Thanks so much.